Hello and welcome to the Creepy Scary Stories channel. Tonight, we present a chilling tale titled, The Resident Above. Make yourself comfortable, turn off the lights, and enjoy the story.
I hauled the last box labeled kitchen out of the car and propped it against the door with my elbow. The building greeted me with the smell of old wood, a cheap pine cleaner, and dampness. It was a typical New York pre-war walk-up, where the elevator worked maybe half the time, and the walls seemed to remember the jazz age.
Look, Mark, I'm running late for a showing in Brooklyn. Apartment 402. Top floor. Go on up yourself. It's unlocked. Just sign the papers on the table.
You're not even gonna show me the hallway. It's pitch black in there. Looks like every single light is out.
The electricians were supposed to swap out the wiring this morning. They probably just didn't get to it yet. Anyway, good luck with the new place.
He peeled out like somebody was chasing him. I was left standing there alone. As I hiked up the stairs, the darkness of the hallway felt like it was getting thicker with every step. On the fourth floor, there wasn't a single light on. I found the keyhole with my phone's flashlight. I turned the key and stepped inside. The place wasn't bad for the price, but the silence in there was heavy. I woke up instantly. My phone screen read 2:14 a.m. My heart was pounding somewhere in the back of my throat. I froze, trying to figure out exactly what had ripped me out of my sleep. Suddenly, right above my head, there was a sound. Heavy, metallic. It was the sound of a chain with massive links being slowly dragged across a concrete floor. A scrape clinker. A scrape clinker. It moved slowly, from the window toward the center of the room. What the hell? I whispered it to myself, holding my breath. The sound stopped directly over my bed. A second of silence, and then a massive, dull thud, like someone had dropped a 20-pound dumbbell from 5 feet up. The light fixture above me swayed, and a fine dusting of white plaster flaked down from the ceiling. In the morning, I stepped out onto the landing. My head was throbbing from lack of sleep. I was convinced that someone above my bedroom was either doing some late-night renovations or playing a sick joke. To the right of my door was the entrance to the attic. I walked over and stopped dead. The heavy metal door wasn't just locked. The edges had been crudely welded shut with a blowtorch. The welds were rusted over, and a thick, even layer of gray dust sat on the frame and the lock like a blanket. Nobody's been through here in 10 years. I ran a finger through the dust. No tracks, no prints. But I knew what I'd heard, and those footsteps had been heavy. As I was heading down for coffee, a door on the third floor creaked open. An elderly woman I hadn't seen yesterday peeked out.
You're the new tenant in 402. Mark. Right.
Yeah, good morning. I was actually gonna ask, who has access to the attic? There was a ton of noise up there last night.
Listen to me carefully. Son. Don't try to find out what's up there. And most importantly, don't ever stare at the ceiling for too long. He feels your gaze. He'll think you're challenging him. You understand? Just ignore it.
Who is he? Mrs. Anna. The door is welded shut. She didn't answer. She just quietly retreated into her apartment and clicked the deadbolt 3 times. When I got back to my door with a paper cup of coffee, I started to reach for my keys, but my hand stopped in midair, right at eye level, carved directly into the wood of my door, and were 4 deep, vertical gouges. The wood had been ripped out in chunks, leaving fresh, light-colored splinters scattered on the welcome mat. It didn't look like it was done with a tool. It looked like someone had shoved their fingers into the wood with incredible force and dragged them straight down. I measured the height with my hand. Exactly 6 feet. Right where my face would have been if I'd been standing on the other side of that door. Evening came way too fast. I tried to drown out the dread with busy work, unpacking boxes and stacking plates in the kitchen. I turned on the faucet to rinse out a coffee mug. The stream of water hit the ceramic, filling the kitchen's silence with a steady hum. I shut the tap off. The sound of running water didn't stop. Exactly 1 second later, right above my head, past that thin layer of ceiling, the identical sound of water hitting a ceramic surface echoed through the room. I froze. Another second passed, and the noise from above cut out just as abruptly as mine had. It's just the pipes. Old, empty pipes. I flicked the faucet back on. Full blast. Splash. I shut it. Delay. 1 second. From above. Splash. Then silence. There were no pipes up there. Above the kitchen, there was nothing but the hollow void of the attic and the flat roof of the building. I climbed into bed without undressing, leaving every light in the place on. My phone screen flickered to 2:14 a.m. The first step echoed from above. Heavy, barefoot, and wet. Slap. The footsteps were wrong. They weren't just moving. They had a distinct rhythm. Some thump. Some thump. I pressed a hand to my chest and felt my heart hammering in a panic. The rhythm from above was a perfect match for my pulse. I held my breath, trying to force my heart to settle. The footsteps above stopped instantly. The room became so quiet I could hear the blood rushing in my ears. The second I took one jagged, desperate breath, the ceiling responded with a synchronized, heavy stomp. What do you want from me? The only answer was silence. Then, a rapid-fire series of thuds hammered directly above my pillow, mimicking a massive panic attack. The next morning, I saw it in the living room, right in the middle of the pristine white ceiling. A stain had formed. It was small, about the size of a man's hand, with the clear outline of a human palm and splayed fingers. I dragged a chair over. He climbed up and touched the edge of the stain with my finger. It wasn't water. The substance was thick, clear, and felt like cold, rendered fat. It didn't have a smell, but the skin where I touched it felt like it had been flash burned with ice. I wiped my finger on my jeans, but that clammy, freezing sensation stayed. as if the grease was starting to soak into my pores.
Mr. Liam, I'm at the front door, but your intercom isn't picking up. You coming down, or should I just leave it?
Yeah, sorry. I'm coming down now. Just leave it by the. Just leave it and get lost. You lazy prick. I hate your stupid voice. You're trash. Just like this building.
What? Sir? Are you kidding me? You know what? Go pick up your own damn package at the warehouse.
The line went dead with a sharp click. I stared at the phone, feeling the cold grease on my finger start to throb. I hadn't said that. I'd only thought about being annoyed. By nightfall, I decided to pack a bag and hit a hotel. To hell with the deposit and Stephen and his Lexus. I walked toward the hallway light switch, but before I could touch it, the bulb above my head exploded, raining glass shards down on me. Right after, I heard the sharp shatter of glass from the kitchen. Then the bedroom. The apartment plummeted into a total, suffocating darkness. The city lights outside the window suddenly looked impossibly far away, as if the glass had turned 10 inches thick. I dropped to my knees, shielding my head. And then, I looked up. In the living room, where the greasy handprint was, a glow began to seep through. It was faint, a sickly, pale blue light. The palm-shaped stain was now shining in the dark like a radioactive trail. And then I saw it. From the center of that palm, a single drop began to form. It didn't fall. It stretched downward toward me, like a long, glass finger. I fumbled for my phone with shaking fingers and swiped the flashlight on. The beam sliced through the thick living room darkness, catching dust motes suspended in the air. I jerked the light to the side, toward the far corner by the window. The beam hit something. A figure was standing in the corner. It was impossibly tall, its head nearly brushing the ceiling. It wore no clothes, just pale, tight skin the color of raw meat. Where a face should have been, there was a flat, smooth surface like weathered stone. In its long, spindly fingers, the creature clutched an old toy phone made of yellow plastic with a red rotary dial. "Hey, who are you?" I yelled it out, but my hand twitched for a split second. When the light hit the corner again, it was empty. Only the heavy drapes were swaying ever so slightly, even though the windows were shut tight. Full-blown panic finally took over. I didn't care about my stuff, the money, or anything else. I lunged for the front door. I grabbed the key, shoved it into the lock, and twisted with everything I had. The metal just disintegrated inside the mechanism. Half the key was left in my fingers. The other half was jammed deep in the keyhole. I started pounding on the door with my fists, screaming, calling for Mrs. Anna, but a dead silence reigned on the other side. I grabbed my phone again, trying to dial 911. In the corner of the screen, where the signal bars usually were, a hollow triangle glowed next to the words, "No service." I ran to the window. Through the glass, I could see the lights of neighboring buildings and taxis cruising down the street. But it all looked like a silent movie being broadcast to another planet. I turned around to find some kind of tool and nearly tripped. Sitting right there in the middle of the hallway carpet was that same yellow toy phone. It hadn't been there a second ago. The plastic looked old and scratched, with dark stains near the receiver. Suddenly, the silence was ripped apart by the sharp, jarring ring of a mechanical bell. My breath hitched. The phone wasn't plugged into anything. It just sat there on the floor, demanding that I answer. Every ring sent a jolt of pain through my teeth. I dropped to my knees and slowly reached out. My fingers brushed the cold plastic. I lifted the receiver to my ear.
Mark, Mark, baby, can you hear me?
Mom, how are you? Where are you calling from? What's going on?
Mark, don't listen to the footsteps. Listen to yourself. You think he's upstairs, but it's a trap. He's not above you. Mark, he's already under your skin. Your rhythm is his rhythm now. Don't let him finish.
The line cut out with a. That made me hurl the receiver aside. I felt an itch in my wrist. I looked down at my arm. Under the skin, right above the vein, something moved. A small lump crawled about half an inch up and vanished. Rage boiled over my fear. I ran to the kitchen, grabbed the biggest butcher knife I had, and bolted into the hallway. I knew the only way to end this was to tear the secret out of that godforsaken attic. I ran to the door that had been welded shut with rusted iron just this morning. I braced my shoulder to ram it, but the door was ajar. The massive weld beads had simply popped like eggshells. A slow draft drifted out of the dark attic opening, smelling of dust and something sickly sweet, like rotting flowers. I took the first step up. I know you're up there. Enough with the games. I'm coming up. The stairs didn't creak under my feet. They gave way softly, as if I were walking on rubber. I held the knife out in front of me and began to sink slowly into the blackness. The darkness in the attic was so thick that my flashlight beam seemed weak and dull. I moved forward, a knife held out, until my shoe caught on something paper-like. I angled the light down. Hundreds, maybe thousands of cardboard shoeboxes lay at my feet. They were arranged in perfect rows, forming a literal labyrinth. I lifted the lid of the one closest to me. Inside was a worn-out wallet, a ring of keys, horn-rimmed glasses, and a passport. I flipped it open. A Jonathan Miller, a residence, apartment 402, issue date, 1984. I opened another box, another passport, a tube of lipstick, a child's toy, and a pair of scuffed pumps. Sarah Connor, apartment 402, 1992. Every box was an archive of a life cut short. They had all lived in my apartment. They had all left their belongings here, and themselves. I pushed further in until I hit the far wall of the attic. There, in the glow of the flashlight, a massive antique mirror in a dark metal frame shimmered. As I got closer, my heart nearly stopped. The mirror didn't reflect the attic. Inside it, I saw my bedroom one floor below. I saw my own body lying on the bed in a helpless posture of sleep. But that wasn't the worst part. Right above my sleeping self, looming from the ceiling like a giant spider, stood that same tall, a faceless creature. It was slowly lowering a long finger toward my chest, right where my heart was beating. No, that's not real. I'm here. I'm standing right here. I swung the knife to shatter the goddamn glass, to sever the connection. My arm flew up, But the moment I went to strike, it stopped dead, as if it had been encased in concrete. I felt a horrific chill spread from my fingers to my shoulder. I looked at my hand. The skin was becoming dry, dark, and hard, covered in deep fissures that looked like tree bark. The knife slipped from fingers that could no longer uncurl. I looked into the mirror at my face. My pupils dissolved into the whites, turning my eyes into two empty, matte glass orbs. I wanted to scream, but my jaws felt like they had fused together. Under the skin of my wrist, as something moved again. This time it didn't vanish but began to bloat, reshaping the very structure of my body. My consciousness began to fade, retreating before something ancient and mechanical. I was no longer in control of myself. I felt my fingers, now long, bony, and incredibly strong, reach out on their own for a heavy metal chain lying near the mirror. An unknown force hoisted my new, twisted body up. I began to walk, circle after circle, a scrape clinker, a scrape clinker. Every step I took from above landed perfectly in sync with the heartbeat of the mark sleeping below. I realized then, there was no neighbor. There was only the cycle. There was only me, preparing myself for the transition. I was the source of the sound. I was the thud against the ceiling. Days or months passed. Time in the attic didn't matter. As suddenly, I froze. Behind me, from below, came a sound I knew all too well. The scrape of a key in the lock of apartment 402. I heard a voice. It was a young man, probably a student. He was hauling in boxes. His steps were light and full of hope. I stood directly over his new bedroom. My white eyes stared straight through the floor. I lifted the heavy chain and slammed it against the concrete with everything I had. Thud. It wasn't a warning. It was a greeting. The next me had just walked into the house.
Thank you for listening to this story. If you enjoyed this dark journey, please don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more nightmares. We would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Tell us what you liked or what sent a shiver down your spine. Until next time, stay safe. If you can,